Welcome, brave souls, to our cabinet of shadows. You have found your way here, seeking the stories that hide in the dark corners of history. Good. It means you are not afraid, or perhaps you are simply better at hiding it than most. Before we draw back the curtain on tonight's dreadful affair, I must ask a small favor. If you wish to ensure these dark tales continue to find you, if you crave the chill that settles deep in the bones, please subscribe to the channel. It is a small price, a simple click, to ensure the darkness always knows where you live. Now turn down the lights, settle in. We are traveling back to the misty, fog-choked hollows of 1895. We are going to a place where the earth is rich and the secrets are deep. We are going to learn what happened to 27 men who had the misfortune of encountering the Burke Widows. This is the story of the reproduction cellar of the Burke Widows. The man who called himself Thomas Vail was not in fact a surveyor. The brass transit and collapsible tripod in his luggage were pristine, purchased new in Memphis and artfully scuffed with dust to suggest long use. His true tools were a keen eye, a quick mind, and the heavy nickel-plated Colt revolver tucked in the waistband at the small of his back, hidden by a respectable tweed jacket that was already proving too warm for the Tennessee humidity. Vail was an agent of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, dispatched from the Chicago office on a case deemed too sensitive for local constables and too bizarre for polite society. The assignment was filed under Missing Persons Wholesale. 26 men, drifters, merchants, prospectors, and laborers, had vanished in the shaded valleys northwest of Knoxville over the past 3 years. Then, 6 weeks ago, a 27th man, a geologist named William Greaves, had also disappeared. Greaves, however, was different. He was the son of a railroad baron, and his father had the coin and the clout to hire the best. Vail arrived in the dreary terminus town of Sawtooth Gap on the afternoon stage, a bone-jarring ride that had coated him in a fine layer of orange dust. The town was little more than a muddy main street, 2 saloons, a general store, and a sheriff's office, all clinging to the banks of a sluggish brown river. The air smelled of coal smoke, damp earth, and something vaguely sour, like spoiled cider. He took a room at the Clinchview Hotel. The proprietor, a gaunt man with a perpetually weeping eye who barely looked up from his ledger. Vail signed the register as T. Vail, K&T Railroad Survey. His first stop was the lesser of the 2 saloons, the Rusty Pick. It was the sort of place where men drank to forget, not to socialize. The floor was sawdust. The air was a blue fog of tobacco smoke. Vail nursed a watered-down whiskey and listened. "Another fella asking about the high country," a miner with a cough-rattled voice muttered to his companion. "Aye, he'll be asking about them next," the other replied, spitting a stream of tobacco juice that sizzled near the pot-bellied stove. Vail turned, affecting the mild curiosity of a newcomer. "Pardon me, gentlemen. Them who?" The first miner, thin and wiry, looked Vail up and down. He saw the soft hands and the clean jacket. "You ain't from round here, mister?" "Surveying for the railroad," Vail said, tapping his breast pocket where his fabricated papers sat. "Looking to lay a line through Blackbriar Valley. Heard the land is good." The second miner let out a harsh laugh. "The land's good, all right. Too good. It belongs to the Burkes." "The Burke Widows, he means," the first one clarified, his voice dropping. "They own that valley, lock, stock, and root. And they don't much like visitors, especially men." Vail feigned ignorance. "A family of widows. That's unusual." "Unusual ain't the word, mister," the second man said, leaning in. The smell of cheap liquor and rotted teeth washed over Vail. "Them women, they ain't right. Old Eliza Burke, the matriarch, she buried 3 husbands. Her 2 daughters, Martha and Clara, they buried theirs too. All fine, strapping men. All put in the ground by lung fever or consumption or a weak heart. But the women, they just get stronger. They bloom. They're witches," the first miner whispered, crossing himself with a sooty hand. "They take men, use 'em up. The valley, it eats 'em." Vail finished his whiskey. "Folklore, superstitious gossip, surely. I'm a man of science and steel, gentlemen. I'm afraid I don't believe in witches." "You will?" the second miner said, turning back to his drink. "You go poking around Blackbriar Valley, you will." Vale left the saloon as the sun began to bleed behind the jagged silhouette of the mountains. The sour smell on the air seemed stronger here, sweeter. He walked back to his hotel, the weight of the Colt at his back a cold, small comfort. 27 men. The word the miner used echoed in his mind. Use 'em up. He hadn't come here to hunt witches. He had come to find William Greaves, or what was left of him. But as the first chill of the Appalachian evening settled over Sawtooth Gap, Thomas Vale couldn't shake the feeling that he was no longer the hunter. He was the bait. The next morning, Vale paid a visit to Sheriff Brody. The sheriff's office was a small, clapboard box that smelled of stale coffee, unswept floors, and fear. Brody himself was a man who looked to have been eroded by time and compromise. His belly spilled over his gun belt, and his mustache, once thick, was now a meager, tobacco-stained thing. "Mr. Vale," Brody said, not rising from his chair, which groaned under his weight. "Heard you was in town." "Railroad, eh?" "That's the ticket," Vale said, keeping his demeanor pleasant. "Just need to get my bearings, Sheriff. I'll be heading up toward Blackbriar Valley to start my survey. Thought I'd check in on the local proprieties, any landowners I should be aware of." Brody's eyes, dull as lead, sharpened for a half second. "Blackbriar Valley. You don't want to go there? The railroad already knows. They sent a man last year. He never filed a report." "William Greaves," Vale said flatly. Brody's face paled. "You ain't railroad. You're a pink. I knew it. Knew it as soon as you walked in. You got that Chicago look." Vale dropped the pretense. He didn't show his badge, but his voice hardened. 27 men, Sheriff, in 3 years. That's not a string of bad luck. That's a harvest. What have you done about it?" Brody heaved himself to his feet, his face flushing with a mix of anger and shame. "What I've done? What can be done? You city fellas come down here with your badges and your tailored suits, thinking you know the world. You don't know the valleys. You don't know the roots of this place." He walked to the window, staring out at the muddy street. The first man to go missing was a peddler, Jonas Fry. No family, no one to ask. Then a couple of coal prospectors, then a trapper. Drifters all. Men who move on, easy to lose. And Greaves? He was different, Brody admitted, his voice lowering. He was a gentleman, educated. He came to my office just like you. Told me he was going to map the geology of the Burke lands. I told him, just like I'm telling you, to stay clear. He laughed, said he wasn't scared of a few old women. Brody turned, his expression bleak. "He's been gone 7 weeks, Mr. Vale." I rode out. Found his horse grazing peaceful-like by the creek. But of Greaves, not a boot print, not a buckle. The valley, it just swallowed him. And the Burke Widows? Did you question them? I did, Brody said, his gaze falling to his desk. Rode right up to that big dark house. Burke's Folly, we call it. Rode up, and old Eliza met me on the porch. She stood there looking like a damn queen and smiled. Asked me if I'd come for tea. I asked her about Greaves. She said, the valley provides for its own, Sheriff, and it takes what it is owed. Her eyes, Mr. Vale, they're like looking into a dry well. And you just left? Vale asked, incredulous. I have a wife, Mr. Vale, 2 daughters. The folks in this town, they're scared. But they're scared of me not being here more than they're scared of the Burkes. As long as the Burkes stay in their valley, and as long as the men they take are from outside, folks here just look the other way. It's a balance, a rotten, ugly balance. And you're here to kick it over. 27 men, Sheriff. I'm not leaving until I find out what happened to them. Brody sighed, a long, rattling sound. Then you're a dead man, Mr. Vale. You're just too proud to lie down. His camp, what was left of it, is about 2 miles past the creek, where the valley narrows. You'll see the path. It's always clear. Vale left the office, the sheriff's words of defeat ringing in his ears. He spent the rest of the day acquiring supplies. A sturdy mule, kerosene, tinned beef, and extra cartridges for his Colt. He told the proprietor of the general store he'd be camping for a week. Best you camp south, Mr. Vale, the man advised, not meeting his eye. The air's cleaner. What's wrong with the air in Blackbriar Valley? The man finished bagging the coffee beans. Some say it's a miasma, comes off the swampy parts, makes folks confused, sick-like. They get notions. Notions? Aye. They say the air, it gets in your blood, makes you want to go up to the folly, makes you want to knock on their door, and once you knock, you don't never leave. That evening, Vale studied his map. Blackbriar Valley was a long, deep cut in the earth, a single road leading in and out. At its very heart sat a large, square mark labeled Burke Manor. It was surrounded on all sides by tributaries, forests, and steep ridges. It was a fortress, a spider's web with the house at its center. And tomorrow, Thomas Vale intended to walk right into it. Vale set out at dawn. The air was cool, and a thick pearlescent fog clung to the river, making the town of Sawtooth Gap look like a phantom settlement. He rode his horse, leading the mule, and followed the deeply rutted track that led north. For the first hour, the land was typical Appalachia. Dense thickets of rhododendron, towering oaks, and the chatter of unseen birds. The road climbed, and the air grew thinner. Then, he passed between two ancient moss-covered stone pillars that seemed to grow out of the hillside. They were unmarked, but Vale knew he had just entered the Burke lands. The change was immediate and profound. The birdsong quieted. The forest floor, which should have been a riot of decaying leaves and undergrowth, was clean. It was carpeted in a strange, vibrant green moss that seemed to pulse with a faint light. The trees, mostly black walnut and sycamore, were enormous, their branches weaving together overhead to form a canopy that blocked out much of the sun. And the smell, the sour miasma of the town, was gone, replaced by an aroma so thick and cloying it was almost visible. It was a scent of overripe peaches, jasmine, and something darker, something metallic and coppery, like old blood. Vale tied a kerchief over his nose and mouth, but the sweetness permeated the cloth instantly. He felt a light, pleasant dizziness, a warmth spreading through his limbs. The air makes folks confused. He shook his head, forcing his mind to focus. He was a Pinkerton. He dealt in facts, not fumes. He found the geologist's camp easily, just as Brody had said. It was tucked in a small clearing by a gurgling creek. A canvas tent, long collapsed, lay rotting on the ground. A rusted geologist's hammer. A satchel, its leather cracked and stiff. Vale knelt and opened it. Inside, protected by an oilcloth wrapper, was William Greaves's journal. Vale's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. The first entries were standard: geological observations, notes on rock strata, sketches of the valley. Greaves was excited, writing of unprecedented mineral deposits and anomalous fungal growth. Then, about a week into his survey, the tone changed. Day 8. The air here is remarkable. I feel vigorous, stronger than I have in years. The sleep is deep, though the dreams are vivid. I dreamt last night of a woman with eyes like green ice. She was beckoning to me from the trees. Day 10. I saw one of them today, the proprietors of the valley. A young woman by the creek. She was beautiful. A classical beauty, like a statue. But she was not dressed for the country. She wore a fine silk dress, the color of cream. She did not see me. I find my work distracting. My thoughts keep returning to the house on the hill. Day 12. The smell. I cannot get enough of it. I've been tracing it to its source. It seems to emanate from a specific, pale, orchid-like fungus growing on the roots of the sycamores. I took a sample. It tastes like honey and pennies. Day 14. I am unwell, or perhaps I am more well than I have ever been. My mind is sharp, but it focuses only on one thing: the house, Burke's Folly. I must see the inside. I must meet them. They are waiting for me. I feel chosen. The final entry was a single, spidery sentence, scrawled across the page as if written in a fever. They are the soil, and the soil is them. I am going to the Folly. I am going to be part of the legacy. I am finally strong enough. Vale closed the journal, his blood running cold. This was not a simple disappearance. This was a conversion. Greaves had walked to his doom willingly, eagerly. The sweet sickness, the miasma. It was a lure, A twig snapped in the woods behind him. Vale's hand was on his Colt in an instant. He spun, crouching, bringing the pistol up. She stood 20 yards away, as if she had materialized from the moss itself. It was the woman from Greaves's journal. She was young, perhaps 25, with porcelain skin and hair the color of flax, bundled atop her head. She wore a simple, elegant day dress of pale blue, entirely unsuited for the forest. She held a basket of the pale, orchid-like fungi. She was, as Greaves had written, beautiful. But it was a cold, symmetrical beauty, like a doll. Her eyes, a pale wintry gray, showed no surprise, no fear, only assessment. "You are trespassing, sir," she said. Her voice was clear and melodic, with a faint old-world accent. "My apologies, ma'am," Vale said, slowly lowering his revolver but not holstering it. "Thomas Vale, surveying for the railroad. I seem to have lost my bearings." "There is nothing to survey here," she said. "The valley is private. The railroad will not be coming." "This land, it belongs to the Burke family, I take it?" "It does," she said. "I am Clara Burke." "A pleasure, Mrs. Burke." A flicker of something, annoyance, sadness, crossed her features. "Miss, my husband, passed, as did my brother-in-law. We are all widows, of a kind. My condolences," Vale said. "I found this camp, a geologist it seems. William Greaves. Did you know of him?" Clara's face remained a perfect, placid mask. "Men come. They are drawn to the valley, but they are rarely strong enough for it. The mountains take them." "He seemed to believe he was going to your house?" "Burke's Folly, he called it." For the first time, she smiled. It was a small, chilling expression that did not reach her eyes. "He was mistaken. He was a weak specimen. We sent him away." "You sent him away? Which way?" Vale pressed. "The valley provides its own exits, Mr. Vale," she said, her voice turning to ice. "My mother-in-law, Eliza, does not appreciate strangers. You should leave. The air here, it can be distressing to new blood." "I find it invigorating," Vale said, testing the word from the journal. Clara's eyes widened, just a fraction. The assessment in her gaze intensified. She looked him up and down, not as a woman looks at a man, but as a farmer might inspect livestock. She noted his broad shoulders, his height, his clear eyes. "So it does," she breathed. She took a step closer. The sweet, fungal scent rolled off her in waves. Vale felt the fog in his mind thicken, a pleasant, buzzing warmth. "Perhaps," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "You are not like the others. Perhaps you are strong enough." "Strong enough for what, Miss Burke?" "For supper," she replied. "The matriarch, Eliza, would be most interested in meeting you. She values strength. She values potential. Come to the house, tonight, at 8. She turned and, without another word, walked into the dense woods. She did not follow a path. She simply vanished into the green, leaving Vale alone with the rotting tent, the damning journal, and the overpowering sweet scent of decay and desire. Vale retreated. He packed up Greaves's journal and rode his horse back toward the stone pillars, the mule trotting behind. The moment he crossed the boundary line, the oppressive perfume of the valley vanished, replaced by the mundane smell of pine and damp earth. His head cleared instantly, the pleasant fog receding, leaving behind a cold dread. He hadn't been invited to supper. He had been summoned for evaluation. He rode back to Sawtooth Gap, his mind racing. Greaves wasn't just missing, he was consumed. The sweet sickness was a sophisticated lure, a biological trap. The widows weren't just recluses, they were predators. Clara's assessment of him, that chilling, appraising stare, confirmed it. A weak specimen. We sent him away. He needed to get inside that house, but he couldn't go in as Thomas Vale, the Pinkerton. He had to go in as Thomas Vale, the specimen. He stabled his horse and went to his hotel room. He washed his face, the cold water a shock. He looked in the cracked mirror. Strong enough. He had to play the part. He had to appear robust, confident, and most importantly, interested. He had to breathe in their sweet sickness and pretend to love it. He spent the afternoon composing a telegraph to the Chicago office to be sent by the station agent in the morning. It was coded. Met with railroad competitors. Burke. Land is viable. Greaves, deceased. Confirmed fungal infection. Am infiltrating premises tonight. If no contact by 48 hours, assume hostile takeover. Send reinforcements. Vale. It was a grim message. He was setting his own clock. 48 hours. At 7 o'clock, as twilight turned the sky to a deep, bruised purple, Vale set out again. This time, he left the mule and the surveying equipment. He wore his best tweed jacket, a clean shirt, and kept his Colt pressed against his spine. He also carried a small, leather-bound notebook and a pencil in his breast pocket. He was not just an agent. He was a witness. He rode into Blackbriar Valley as the moon, a pale sliver, rose over the ridge. The path to Burke's Folly was unmistakable. It was not a road, but a wide, moss-covered swath of earth that led directly to the house. The sweet, heady perfume returned, stronger this time, as if the valley was exhaling in welcome. Vale took a deep breath, letting the drug fog his mind. He needed to feel what Greaves felt. He felt it. A burgeoning, irrational euphoria, a sense of purpose, a deep, primal pull toward the house. Burke's Folly loomed from the mist. It was not the decaying Gothic relic he had imagined. It was an enormous 3-story manor of dark stone and black walnut, built in an older Georgian style. Every window was lit, not with the warm yellow of kerosene, but with a pale greenish light. The grounds were not wild. They were meticulously manacled, but the plants were all wrong. Strange, moon-pale flowers he didn't recognize, and the ever-present glowing moss. The house was perched on a hill, a dark throne overlooking the entire valley. Vale dismounted, tied his horse to an iron hitching post shaped like a coiled serpent, and walked up the stone steps. Before he could knock, the massive dark wood door swung open. A second woman stood in the entryway. She was older than Clara, perhaps in her mid-40s, with a severe face and dark hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to pull at her skin. She was tall, dressed in a practical high-collared black dress. Her entire being radiated authority and suspicion. "You are late," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of the melody Clara's held. "My apologies. Thomas Vale, I was invited." "We know who you are," the woman said. "I am Martha Burke. My husband is gone." She said it not with sadness, but with impatience, as if he were a piece of misplaced furniture. "Wipe your feet. The matriarch does not abide filth." Vale stepped inside, onto a black and white marble floor. The interior of the house was vast. The air was thick with the fungal perfume, but here it was mixed with the smells of beeswax, old paper, and something savory and unsettling. The green light came from intricate gasoliers, but the gas seemed to burn with a chemical tinge. The walls were covered in portraits, dozens of them. All were of the Burke family, a long line of stern-looking men and pale porcelain-skinned women. But the further back the lineage went, the stranger the portraits became. The eyes seemed too large, the skin too pale. "This way," Martha commanded. "Eliza is waiting." She led him through a grand hall, past a library with towering shelves, and into a dining room large enough to seat 40. At the head of a massive polished table sat one person. She was ancient, a desiccated thing wrapped in black lace and velvet. Her skin was like dried parchment, her eyes sunk deep into her skull, but they blazed with a terrifying cognitive light. This was Eliza Burke, the matriarch. Clara, in her pale blue dress, stood behind her left shoulder, a pale shadow. "Mr. Vale," Eliza rasped. The sound was like stones grinding together. "You came. You invited me," Vale said, forcing the intoxicated, eager tone he'd practiced. "The air, your valley. It's intoxicating. I had to see." Eliza's thin lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. It revealed teeth that were startlingly white and strong. "Intoxicating," she repeated. "Yes, it weeds out the weak. It calls to the potent. Sit." Vale took a seat, which Martha pulled out for him. The table was set for 4. A massive roast sat on a silver platter in the center, It was dark, almost purple, and glistened under the green light. "You are a strong man, Mr. Vale," Eliza said, her eyes never leaving him. "A fine specimen. Good shoulders, clear eyes. Tell me, your family, were they healthy, long-lived?" "My father was a blacksmith," Vale lied smoothly. "My mother, she had 9 children. All survived to adulthood." "Excellent," Eliza hissed, nodding. "The stock is good." Martha began to carve the roast. The meat was fibrous, the color unsettling. She served Vale a large portion, along with strange pale vegetables. "Eat," the matriarch commanded. "You must keep up your strength. We have so much to discuss." Clara, silent, moved to a sideboard and poured a dark red wine. She brought the glass to Vale. Her fingers, cold as marble, brushed his as he took it. He looked into her eyes and saw nothing. No soul, just a beautiful, terrible emptiness. "To new blood," Eliza said, raising her own glass. Vale knew, with chilling certainty, that he was being interviewed, and he knew, as he raised the glass of drugged wine to his lips, that this was a test he could not afford to fail. He was no longer a detective. He was a candidate. The wine was as sweet as the air, and it hit him fast. It didn't make him drunk. It sharpened him, but in the wrong way. The colors of the room seemed brighter, the green light more intense. The sound of Eliza's dry breathing was loud in his ears. The fog in his mind returned, a cozy, compliant blanket. "The meat is delicious," Vale managed, forcing himself to chew the strange, gamey flesh. It tasted of copper and moss. "It is from the valley," Eliza said. "The valley provides all we need. It is a curated land, Mr. Vale. We Burkes have tended it for generations. We have improved the soil. We have improved the stock. My husband, Clara's, they were not improvements," Martha said suddenly, her voice sharp. She had not sat, but stood guard by the door. "They were weak. They diluted the line. They were unsuitable." "Patience, Martha," Eliza rasped. "The line endures. It seeks its own strength. It always seeks new blood. Tell me, Mr. Vale, what do you know of husbandry?" "Husbandry, like farming?" Vale asked, playing dumb. "Of a sort," Eliza chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "The careful breeding of traits, the selection of strength, the culling of weakness. It is the only thing that matters. Legacy, purity, reproduction." There it was, the word from the title of his case file, reproduction. Vale felt a bead of sweat trace a cold line down his spine, but the drug in his system made him feel placid, interested. "That seems a cold way to look at the world, ma'am." "It is the only way," Eliza snapped, her eyes flashing. "The world is decay. We are the only thing holding it back. We are the crucible. We test the metal, and we discard the slag." She was talking about the 27 men. They were the slag. What happened to Mr. Greaves?" Vale asked, feigning the drugged curiosity. "Clara said he was weak." "He was," Eliza sneered. "He had a weak chest, a poet's heart. He came to us, drawn by the air, babbling of love and beauty. But he was not viable. He failed the assessment." "What assessment?" Eliza smiled. "You are undergoing it now, Mr. Vale." She rang a small silver bell. Martha moved, not to the kitchen, but to Vale. "The matriarch wishes to show you the library," Martha said. It was not a request. Vale stood, his legs feeling strangely heavy. The room seemed to tilt slightly. "Of course." Clara and Eliza remained at the table. "Do not disappoint me, Mr. Vale," Eliza whispered as he passed. "I am so weary of disappointments." Martha led him from the dining room, down the hall of portraits, to the library. It was a 2-story room, the walls lined with thousands of books. But there were no novels, no poetry. Vale scanned the titles: Treatise on Equine Bloodlines, The Principles of Phrenology, Darwin, Galton, and dozens of volumes that looked much, much older, bound in dark, stained leather. But Martha didn't lead him to the shelves. She led him to a large wooden lectern in the center of the room. On it sat an enormous, leather-bound book, at least 3 feet wide when opened. It was a ledger. "The stud book," Martha said, her voice betraying the first hint of emotion. Pride. She opened it. Vale, his mind swimming in the sweet chemical fog, leaned in. His blood turned to ice. The book was filled with handwritten entries spanning decades. Each entry was a man's name. Jonas Fry, peddler. C. 40 years, stocky, fair health. Lungs, weak. Miasma test, 4 days. Assessment, failed. Status, culled. T. Miller, minor. C. 25 years. Strong back, good teeth, consumption in family. Assessment, failed. Status, culled. J. Smith, traveler. C. 30 years. Quick, intelligent, brittle bones. Assessment, failed. Status, culled. There were 26 failed entries. Then he saw the last one. William Greaves, geologist. 32 years tall, educated, weak constitution, but eager. Miasma test, 2 days, potent. Assessment, pending. Status, holding. Holding? Vale breathed, the word slipping out. He showed some promise, Martha said. His mind was sharp, but his body was frail. The matriarch thought he might adapt. He did not. He was reclassified last week. She turned the page. A new section, titled Viable. It was empty, save for one fresh, still damp entry at the top of the page. Thomas Vale, surveyor. 35-40 Surreyors prime specimen. Broad shoulders, strong hands. High constitution, resists miasma. Deceptive. Assessment, viable. Status, pending. "He's not a pending anymore, Martha," Clara's voice said from the doorway. She had followed them. She held a small silver syringe. "The matriarch is very pleased. She finds deceptive to be a sign of intelligence, a very desirable trait." Vale turned. Martha was at the door, blocking his exit. Clara was advancing, the syringe held delicately in her hand. The sweet, fungal scent was overwhelming. "What is this?" Vale said, his Pinkerton training screaming at him to fight. But his body was a prisoner of the drug. He was heavy, slow. "This is your acceptance, Mr. Vale," Clara said, her voice a purr. "You have passed the assessment. You are strong. You are smart. You are viable." What for?" Clara stopped, just inches from him. Her cold gray eyes were luminous. "Why? For the cellar, of course. For the reproduction." She lunged with the syringe. Vale roared, a desperate animal sound. He was drugged, but the terror gave him a shot of adrenaline. He slapped the syringe away, sending it skittering across the floor. He shoved Clara back hard, sending her crashing into a globe. Martha was on him in an instant. She was not just a stern housekeeper. She was preternaturally strong. Her hands clamped on his arm like steel traps. "Fool! You should be honored!" Vale brought his heel down on her instep. She grunted but didn't release him. He drove his elbow back into her ribs. He heard a crack, but her grip held. This wasn't natural strength. This was something else. "He's too strong!" Clara shrieked, recovering. "The dose!" Vale ripped his arm free, tearing his jacket. He didn't run for the front door. He knew he'd never make it. He ran for the back of the library. He saw a smaller door, a servant's passage. He slammed through it, finding himself in a dark, narrow hall. He could hear them behind him, their footsteps light and unnervingly fast. He fumbled for his Colt, but his fingers were numb, uncooperative. He burst through another door and found himself in a laboratory. It wasn't a kitchen. It was a still room, but not for preserving fruits. This was the source. The room was vast, humid, and lit by the same eerie green-burning gas. Enormous copper vats lined one wall, bubbling with a thick, pale mash. On the tables were racks of glass beakers, distilling coils, and piles of the pale, orchid-like fungus. This was the heart of the operation. They weren't just harvesting the miasma. They were refining it, distilling it, weaponizing it. The smell was overpowering. It was the scent of the valley, concentrated 1,000 times. Vale's head swam. He felt a wave of the same euphoria, the same compliance, wash over him. They are right. It is an honor. I am strong. I am viable. He shook his head, biting his own tongue. The sharp sting of pain cleared his vision for a second. He was Thomas Vale, Pinkerton. He was not stock. He heard Clara and Martha enter the room behind him. "Don't damage him, Martha," Clara called out. "Eliza wants him whole." Vale looked for a weapon. He grabbed a heavy glass beaker filled with the glowing, viscous liquid. He hurled it at them. It shattered on the stone floor, and the concentrated liquid hissed as it ate into the moss that grew even here, between the flagstones. "The sample!" Martha yelled, outraged. That gave Vale the second he needed. He saw another door, a heavy, iron-bound one at the far end of the room. It was a cellar entrance. He ran for it. He fumbled with the heavy iron latch. It was cold, damp. "It's no use," Martha snarled, closing the distance. "There is no escape. There is only the honor." Vale ripped the latch open and tumbled down a set of steep stone steps, pulling the heavy door shut behind him. He heard it slam against the frame, the sound echoing in the darkness below. He fumbled for a bolt on the inside. His fingers found a massive sliding iron bar. He rammed it home, just as Martha's body slammed against the other side. The door shuddered, but it held. Vale collapsed onto the dirt floor at the bottom of the steps. He was in total darkness. The air here was different. The sweet scent was gone, replaced by a thick, fetid stench of ammonia, spoiled straw, and raw, bloody meat. He was shaking, the drug and the adrenaline at war in his body. He fumbled in his pocket for his match safe. His fingers were still clumsy, but he managed to get one free. He struck it against the stone. The small flame flared to life, casting a small, flickering circle of light. He was not in a wine cellar. He was in a stable, but the stalls were not for horses. They were iron cages, stretching back into the oppressive darkness, and they were occupied. "Water, please. Water." A voice, a dry crackle, came from the nearest cage. Vale scrambled forward, holding the match high. A man was inside, lying on a bed of filthy straw. He was emaciated, his skin pale and translucent, his eyes vast and hollow in the dark. He wore the tattered remnants of a good suit. "Greaves?" Vale whispered, his voice trembling. The man looked at him. There was no recognition, only a profound, bottomless despair. "Greaves," the man rasped. "Yes, I was Greaves. Before the testing." The match burned Vale's fingers. He dropped it, plunging the room back into darkness. He heard Martha pounding on the door above. Who are you?" Greaves whispered in the dark. Vale struck another match. "Thomas Vale, Pinkerton. I'm here to find you." "Pinkerton," Greaves breathed. The word sounded foreign, meaningless. You passed. You're viable." "What is this place, Greaves? What have they done to you?" This is the cellar," Greaves said, his voice a ghost. The reproduction cellar." The match illuminated more of the room. Vale saw other cages, in each one, a man. Some were curled in the straw, unmoving. Others stared at him with the same empty, hollow eyes. They were rail-thin, their bodies scarred and tracked. They were being kept. 27, Vale whispered, horrified. "No," Greaves rasped. "Not all. Some failed. Some were culled." He pointed a shaking, skeletal finger toward a dark corner of the cellar. "The failures go there, to feed the root." "The root?" "The matriarch," Greaves whispered. "No, the thing she serves. It's beneath us. It's always hungry. It needs the legacy." The pounding on the door above grew more frantic. "He's in the cellar." Vale heard Martha roar. "He's with the stock." "What do they do to you?" Vale asked, dreading the answer. Greaves looked at him, and for the first time, a flicker of the man he was, the educated geologist, returned. "They assess. They test. They take from us, Mr. Vale. They're trying to breed. They take our blood. They take our seed. They feed it to the things in the other room." He started to sob, a dry, racking sound. "But we're all failures. We're not pure enough. The offspring, they're monsters. They die, or the matriarch feeds them to the root. She's been trying for decades. She needs a perfect specimen. She needs you." The match went out. Darkness. The sound of Greaves's weeping. And the pounding, which suddenly stopped. A new sound, a heavy, scraping sound, a different door. "Oh no," Greaves whimpered in the dark. She's coming, the matriarch. She's coming from the throne." "Where?" Vale demanded, striking his last match. "There." Greaves pointed to the far wall. A section of the stone was moving, a hidden passage grinding open. Vale got to his feet, his Colt. He finally got his numb fingers around the handle and pulled it free. The stone panel slid open, revealing a tunnel lit by the same sickly green moss. And from the tunnel, a sound, a wet, dragging, slithering sound, and the voice of Eliza Burke, no longer a dry rasp, but a resonant, terrible croon. "Welcome, my child. Welcome to the family. You are so strong. You will be the one. You will give me the air the earth demands." Thomas Vale stood in the dark, with a 6-shot revolver, facing a nightmare generations old. He was out of matches, and he was running out of time. The last match sputtered and died, plunging the cellar into a thick, putrid blackness. The only light was the sickly green phosphorescence from the newly opened tunnel, silhouetting a figure that defied description. It was Eliza, but it was not Eliza. The ancient, desiccated woman he'd seen at the table was gone. The thing that emerged from the passage was hunched and massive, still draped in black lace, but it moved with a horrifying, fluid power. It seemed to drag something behind it, something wet and heavy. "You have seen the book, Mr. Vale," Eliza's voice echoed, seeming to come from the thing itself, and also from the walls around them. "You have seen the failures. They were not worthy. Their blood was thin. Their seed was poison. They're men," Vale snarled, his voice tight. He raised the Colt, aiming by sound and the horrifying silhouette. The drug was still in him, a confusing fog, but the immediate primal terror was a sharp, clarifying blade. "They were men," the matriarch hissed. "Now they are sustenance. They are the water for the root. But you are the pollen. You are the future." She moved, faster than anything that size should. Vale fired. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The muzzle flash illuminated a face that was no longer human. It was pale, elongated, her mouth wide and filled with the same white, strong teeth. The bullet struck her in the shoulder, throwing up a spray of black cloth and something thick and dark, like sap. She laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. "Lead!" she spat. "The follies of men. You think that can stop the soil? You think that can stop the legacy?" From the cages, the other men began to moan, a chorus of terror. "The root! The root!" Greaves whimpered. Eliza raised a hand, and from the floor behind her, the thing she was dragging pulsed. It was a massive, pale, root-like tendril, thick as a man's torso, and it glistened with green glowing slime. It was attached to her. Or rather, she was attached to it. She was not its servant. She was its primary limb. "She is the matriarch!" Greaves shrieked. "She is the root!" The tendril lashed out. It struck the cage next to Vale's, peeling the iron bars apart as if they were wet paper. Vale fired again and again. He emptied the revolver into the monstrous, shuffling form of Eliza. The bullet staggered her, but she did not fall. "Martha! Clara!" Eliza bellowed. "The specimen is damaging himself. Subdue him." From above, the pounding on the main cellar door resumed, this time with a heavy, rhythmic force. They were using a battering ram. Vale was trapped between the monsters above and the monster below. He looked at Greaves, at the pale, skeletal face in the dark. "How do I kill it?" Vale yelled. The still room," Greaves gasped. The solution. The clear one. The one that burns. The fungicide. It hates it." The cellar door above Vale's head splintered. A boot, Martha's boot, kicked through. Vale had no choice. He ran at the matriarch. It was the last thing she expected. He didn't run from the tunnel. He ran for it. He dodged the lashing tendril, the fungal slime splattering his coat. He shoved past the monstrous Eliza, firing his last useless bullet into her face. She roared in pain and fury. He scrambled into the green-lit tunnel. It was slick, coated in the moss, and it sloped downwards. He slid more than ran, tumbling into a vast natural cavern beneath the house. The smell, the sweet, coppery, fungal smell, was suffocating. The entire cavern glowed. At its center was the heart of the curse. It was a thing, a pulsating gray-white mass of fungal tissue and roots, easily 30 feet across. It looked like a gigantic, exposed brain embedded in the earth. Countless tendrils snaked from it, spreading up into the foundation of the house, into the soil of the valley. And from its center rose a stalk. The stalk was Eliza. The old woman's body was grafted to it. Her legs fused into the pulsating mass. The thing in the cellar was merely an extension, a puppet she controlled. The real Eliza was here, plugged into the earth, a queen on a throne of living, sentient fungus. The skeletal remains of generations of men and strange, misshapen infants were embedded in the muck around its base. Culled. Failures. You see, her voice boomed, amplified by the cavern. You see the glory. For 150 years we have tried. We made a pact. The soil gives us life, vitality. We do not age. We do not sicken. And in return, we give it new life. A perfect child. An heir. And you, Thomas Vale, you are perfect. The tendril from the cellar shot into the cavern, grabbing Vale's ankle. It dragged him, pulling him toward the central mass. Above, he heard the cellar door crash open. "He's in the throne room! Get him!" Martha yelled. Vale was being dragged through the filth, toward the pulsing, waiting matriarch. He was out of bullets. He was out of time. He reached for his belt, his numb fingers finding not a weapon, but his small leather notebook. He remembered the still room, the beaker he'd thrown, the one that burns. He looked up, a smaller tunnel directly above the central mass. He recognized it, a ventilation shaft or a pipe, leading back up to the house. He could smell the distillery. The tendril pulled him to the base of the throne. The matriarch's true face, ancient and terrible, leaned down. "We will begin," she hissed. "No." Vale spat. He ripped the notebook from his pocket, tore out a page, and shoved it into his mouth. He began to chew the paper, a last, desperate act of a witness. The world had to know. Stubborn. Eliza crooned. "I like that. It will make for strong children." She lowered her head, her mouth opening. "Now!" a voice screamed from above. A deluge of fire poured from the pipe above them. It wasn't fire. It was the concentrated distilled fungicide from the still room. But it was mixed with something else. Kerosene. It hit the matriarch. It hit the central root. The sound that creature made was not of this earth. It was a steam whistle shriek of agony. The entire cavern lit up, not with green, but with a searing chemical blue. The matriarch dissolved. The pale flesh of the root blackened and sizzled. The tendril around Vale's ankle released him. He scrambled back as the entire central mass began to collapse, melting into a smoking, toxic sludge. Someone was standing at the lip of the tunnel above. A figure in trousers, holding an empty kerosene can. Sheriff Brody. He looked down at Vale, his face grim, his mustache stained with soot. "Told you," Brody grunted, "that you'd kick it all over." Vale stared, gasping, as the massive fungal entity writhed and died. The green light of the cavern faded, replaced by the acrid chemical smoke and the blue flames of the burning fungicide. "Brody!" Vale coughed. "How?" "Your telegraph," the sheriff yelled down, his voice echoing. "The boy at the station. He's sweet on my girl. Showed it to me. Hostile takeover. Reinforcements. I ain't a Pinkerton, but I ain't a fool. I knew what it meant. I've been watching this house for 2 days waiting for a sign." "The still room," Vale yelled. "Clara and Martha." "Dealt with," Brody said, his voice grim. "When I saw the smoke from the chimney, I reckoned they was cooking. I came in through the back, found that witch's kitchen, and I found them. They're dead. They ain't easy to kill, Mr. Vale," Brody said, reloading his own service revolver. "They're strong, but they ain't stronger than a barrel of their own medicine and a match. The still room is a fine blaze. Now, we got to get you out." A rope ladder snaked down the tunnel. "Grab on!" Vale, his body screaming in protest from the drug and the fight, grabbed the rungs. He was halfway up when the cavern began to shake. The burning root brain was collapsing, pulling the house's foundation down with it. "It's coming down!" Brody yelled, hauling Vale over the lip, back into the laboratory. The still room was an inferno. The copper vats had melted, the strange liquids fueling a fire that was already licking at the ceiling. "What about the men?" Vale yelled, his throat raw. "The men in the cellar." Brody's face was a mask of pity. "Son, there ain't no men in that cellar. Not anymore. What's down there? It's just stock. It's what's left. We can't save 'em. We can only cleanse 'em." He didn't have to say another word. Vale understood. It was a mercy. "The house is going," Brody said, grabbing Vale's arm and pulling him toward the servants' passage. "The fire. It's taken the root. It's taken it all." They stumbled through the library, which was already filling with thick, green-tinged smoke. The stud book was still open on its lectern. Vale, in a last act of furious justice, grabbed a flaming curtain and threw it onto the book. The pages, dry as tinder, ignited instantly, the names of the 27 men turning to black ash. They burst out the front door, the main hall collapsing behind them in a shower of sparks and burning timber. The sweet, fungal scent was being consumed, replaced by the honest, clean smell of pine and wood smoke. They ran across the manicured lawn, the strange, pale flowers shriveling in the heat. Burke's folly was being consumed. The fire was raging, a magnificent, terrible pillar of flame against the night sky. From inside the inferno, they heard the screams, the high, thin shrieks of Clara and Martha, not dead, but trapped, and from deep below the earth, a final subterranean bellow of the dying entity. Then, silence, only the roar of the fire. Vale collapsed on the mossy grass, the drug finally winning, his body shutting down. He watched the green-lit windows of the manor pop, one by one, as the flames found them. You found Greaves," Brody said, sitting heavily beside him. "He's in there," Vale whispered, nodding at the fire. "He's free." "They all are," Brody said. He pulled a flask from his coat. "This ain't their drugged-up wine. This is Tennessee whiskey. You earned it, Mr. Vale." Vale took the flask, the raw alcohol burning a clean path down his throat. He looked at the sheriff. You knew what they were." I reckon I knew," Brody admitted, not looking at him. "I knew they was monsters. I didn't know how to fight 'em. I'm just a man, Vale. But you're a Pinkerton. You're paid to walk into hell. I figured I'd at least hold the door for you." They sat in silence for a long time, two men watching a dynasty of horrors burn to the ground. The very moss beneath them seemed to be turning brown, the unnatural vitality of the valley receding as its heart was consumed. "What do we tell 'em?" Brody asked as the roof of the folly caved in. "The truth," Vale said, his voice hard. "Mr. Vale," Brody said softly. "The truth? The truth is a root goddess and a reproduction cellar and 27 men used as livestock. The truth is a witch's brew that makes you love your own destroyer. Folks around here, they can't handle that truth. It'll break 'em. It'll poison this valley forever." Vale looked at the fire, at the ashes of the stud book. He thought of Greaves's journal. He thought of the empty cages. "You're right," Vale said, the exhaustion settling on him like a shroud. "So we give them a truth they can handle." By dawn, Burke's folly was a smoking black skeleton. The fire had been so intense, fueled by the distilled chemicals and the ancient dry wood, that it had collapsed the entire structure into the cellar and the cavern below. The great house, the laboratory, the throne room, and the reproduction cellar were all one and the same, a single massive smoldering grave. Vale and Brody walked the perimeter. The unnatural, vibrant green of the valley was gone. The moss was a scorched black, the huge trees were skeletal, and the pale exotic flowers were ash. The sweet sickness was gone, replaced by the smell of a forest fire. The valley had been sterilized. "It's over," Vale said. It felt strange to say it. "Aye," Brody replied. "The curse is broke. The land is just land again." They rode back to Sawtooth Gap in silence. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, a shockingly normal and beautiful sight. When they arrived in town, the streets were already bustling. The proprietor of the general store was sweeping his porch. He looked up, saw the two men, soot-covered and exhausted, and his eyes widened. "Sheriff? Mr. Vale? My God, the smoke. We saw it all the way from here. Was it?" "It was Burke's folly, Mr. Henderson," Brody said, his voice carrying the weight of authority Vale had never heard in it before. "It's gone." A small crowd began to gather. "What happened?" someone asked. "Was it the widows? Did they—" Vale held up a hand. He looked at Brody. The sheriff nodded. "It was a tragedy," Vale announced, his voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "I was surveying near the property late last night. It seems Mr. Greaves, the geologist, had been camping there and, well, he was engaged in his work. He was testing the soil." He took a breath. "The widows. They had a large unlicensed still in their cellar. Not for liquor. For chemicals. Turpentine, perhaps. Highly volatile. We believe Mr. Greaves's testing, or perhaps a stray spark from the still, ignited the fumes. The entire place went up. A chemical fire. Explosive." "My God," the proprietor whispered. "A still." "What about Greaves and the widows?" a woman asked. "Sheriff Brody and we attempted a rescue," Vale said, his voice low. "We were too late. The fire was total. The matriarch, her daughters, and, I'm afraid, Mr. Greaves. They were all trapped in the inferno. There's nothing left." The crowd was silent, processing. It was a shocking, mundane end. A fire, a still, an accident. It was a truth they could understand, a truth they could accept. "And the others?" a voice called out. "The other men? The ones who vanished?" "We found evidence," Brody said, stepping forward. "In the ruins. It seems the widows, they weren't just recluses. They were running a gang, robbing travelers. The remains, what we found, it suggests they disposed of the bodies in the same cellar. The fire, it's a grave now. A grave for all of them. A collective gasp. Robbers, murderers, not witches, not monsters, just criminals." The fear that had held Sawtooth Gap hostage for years finally broke, replaced by a grim, understandable anger. "They'll trouble this valley no more," Brody declared. "The land will be seized by the county. It's over." The crowd dispersed, already weaving the new, official story. The Burke Widows, the criminal gang, burned up in their own illegal still. It was a fine, simple, American tale. Vale went to the telegraph office. He handed the agent a new message for the Pinkerton office in Chicago. Case closed. All 27 victims located. Deceased. Perpetrators, Burke 3, also deceased. Matter resolved by accidental fire. Greaves confirmed, deceased. Returning to Chicago immediately. Vale. He knew as he handed it over that he was closing the book on one of the most monstrous cases of his career with a lie. But it was a necessary one. Some truths were too terrible to be told. Some cellars were meant to be sealed. Vale was packing his bag in the hotel, his movements stiff and sore, when a soft knock came at his door. He opened it. An old woman stood there. She was tiny, her face a road map of wrinkles, her eyes sharp and black as obsidian. She was a mountain woman, a granny witch as the locals called them. She held out a small cloth-wrapped bundle. "You smell of it," she said, her voice a dry rustle. "You smell of the rot." Vale stared at her. "I don't know what you mean." "Aye, you do," she said, pushing the bundle into his chest. "I'm Odaletta. I live in the high ridges. I'm the one folks come to when the Burkes put the sickness in their blood. But it's been years since anyone was strong enough to fight it. You burned it. You burned the root." She knew. She had known all along. "Why didn't you—" "Do what?" she scoffed. "A crazy old woman against that? Against the earth itself? I can cure the symptoms, son. I can give them a tea to clear their head. But I can't cut the cancer. You You and the sheriff? You cut the cancer. Vale opened the bundle. Inside were dried herbs, sage, milk thistle, and something he didn't recognize. For the blood, she said. You breathed their air. You ate their food. It's in you, son. A little piece of it. It'll give you dreams. This'll quiet 'em. Won't cure it. Nothing will. But it'll quiet 'em. Thank you, Odaletta. Vale said, his voice rough. The valley is clean, she said, nodding. But the world ain't. There's other routes, other dark places. You be careful, Pinkerton. She turned and was gone, as silently as she had arrived. Vale looked at the herbs. He knew she was right. He would never be truly free of Blackbriar Valley. He would carry the taint of that sweet sickness, the memory of that cellar, for the rest of his life. The next morning, Thomas Vale boarded the stagecoach. The town of Sawtooth Gap looked different. The air was clear. People were talking in the streets, laughing. The sour, fearful pall had lifted. Sheriff Brody was there to see him off. He stood tall, his uniform brushed, his badge polished. He looked 10 years younger. So, Brody said, handing Vale his bag. Chicago, Vale confirmed. You ever find yourself back in Tennessee, Mr. Vale? The whiskey is on me. I don't reckon I'll be back, Sheriff, Vale said. Brody nodded, understanding. Some places, you only visit once. The stagecoach lurched forward. Vale looked back one last time at the small, muddy town and the man who had found his courage. He looked north, toward the mountains, where a plume of thin gray smoke still rose. He settled in for the long ride. He was a man of facts, of logic. He had a report to file, a report filled with combustible chemicals and a tragic fire. A neat, tidy report. But as the coach rattled on, he reached into his pocket. His fingers brushed against the small, leather-bound notebook. He had retrieved it from the library floor, its cover scorched, and inside, on the first page, he'd written down, from memory, the contents of the stud book. Jonas Fry, T. Miller, J. Smith, William Greaves. 27 names. He looked at his hand. A fine specimen. Viable. He closed his eyes, but the sleep that came was not restful. It was filled with dreams of green light and the scent of peaches and pennies. Vale's report to the Pinkerton agency was a masterpiece of fabrication. It detailed the discovery of an illegal chemical and moonshine operation run by the reclusive Burke family, linked to a string of robberies. It stated that Agent Vale, in a joint operation with the local sheriff, had moved to arrest the suspects when the volatile still exploded, killing all perpetrators and destroying the evidence of their other crimes, including the remains of their victims. The case was closed. The railroad baron who had hired them was given the truth about his son's heroic death in the line of geological discovery, caught in the blast while investigating. Vale was commended for his bravery. But Thomas Vale was a changed man. He continued to work for the agency, but the shadows in his cases seemed deeper, the motives of his criminals more primal. He drank the tea Odaletta had given him, but the dreams never fully went away. He kept the scorched notebook. It was his secret, his sin, the stud book of the Burke Widows. He had burned the original, but he had become its new keeper. He was the only one left who knew the real truth. He often wondered about the why. Was it just a pact for long life? Or was it something more? Was Eliza truly trying to breed something? A replacement for herself? An heir for the entity in the earth? What would the child of a viable specimen and a human fungal hybrid have been? He shuddered. Some questions were better left in the ash. Years passed. 1903. Vale was in Chicago, a senior agent now, his hair graying at the temples. He was reading a newspaper, a report from back east. It was a small article buried in the back pages. A strange story from a remote valley in West Virginia. A family of recluses, a string of disappearances, local talk of unnatural women, and a strange, sweet smell in the air. Vale's blood ran cold. He looked at the name of the valley, Hollow's End. He went to his safe and pulled out the old, scorched notebook. He looked at the family tree he had briefly glimpsed in the portraits at Burke's Folly. He remembered one name, a daughter who had married away in the 1850s. She had married a man from West Virginia. Odoletta's words came back to him. The valley is clean, but the world ain't. There's other roots. The fire hadn't destroyed the cancer. It had merely burned one tumor. The legacy wasn't just in the soil of Blackbriar Valley. It was in the blood. That night, Thomas Vale wrote a letter. It was not to the Pinkerton Agency. It was to Sheriff Brody. Sheriff, I hope this letter finds you well. I hope your town is peaceful. I write to you on a matter of some gravity. I have reason to believe that the family business we concluded in 1895 was not, in fact, localized. I believe a cutting was planted elsewhere. A different valley. The same methods. The same hunger. I am going to West Virginia. I am going to see if the air is sweet there too. I do not know what I will find. I just know that I am, perhaps, the only man in the world who knows what to look for. I know what viable means. If you do not hear from me within 2 months, you will know the cancer has found me. Do not send help. Send kerosene. Your friend, T. Vale. He sealed the letter. He looked at it for a long time. He thought of the fire, of the cellar, of the 27 men who had been harvested. He picked up the letter and held it to the flame of his lamp. He watched it curl and blacken, the words turning to ash. Brody deserved his peace. This was not his fight. It was Vale's. He was the witness. He was the specimen who had escaped. The next day, Thomas Vale resigned from the Pinkerton Agency, citing ill health. He bought a train ticket east. He packed a new heavy Colt revolver, 3 boxes of cartridges, and a very large tin of kerosene. He was no longer an agent of the law. He was a man of science and steel, as he had once claimed. And he was going witch hunting. He stepped onto the train, a lone, grim-faced man. He knew he was probably going to his death. He knew he was walking back into the same hell he had barely escaped. But as the train lurched forward, he breathed deep. The air of Chicago was foul with coal smoke and stockyards, but to him it was the cleanest air in the world. He was haunted, he was tainted, and he was terrified. But he was going, because he remembered the names in the book. He remembered the hollow eyes of William Greaves, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his very soul, that somewhere in the hills of West Virginia, a new stud book was being filled, and new specimens were being assessed. The voice from the darkness returns, soft and final. The records of Thomas Vale end there. The Pinkerton Agency lists him as resigned. History has no record of what happened in Hollow's End, West Virginia. But the disappearances, they say, stopped. It seems Mr. Vale, the viable specimen, was in the end strong enough. Thank you for listening. Do not forget to subscribe. The shadows are full of such stories, and they are always, always hungry for an audience. Good night.